Hi, I'm Cindy Gavin, CEO and co-founder of Let's Win Pancreatic Cancer, and it is an honor to kick off episode 2 of the PancChat podcast in collaboration with PanCAN. I want to thank Julie Fleshman for being our partner, Alisyn Camerota for being our host, and Revolution Medicines for their support of this important initiative. Now over to you, Allyson.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to PancChat. This is our second episode, and it's a very important one because we're going to be looking at the latest treatments for pancreatic cancer, including those that are currently in the pipeline, as well as research. I'm your host, Alisyn Camerota, and we're about to talk to two doctors who know the front lines of fighting pancreatic cancer. So Dr. Allyson and Dr. Anna Berkenblit. Let me begin with Dr. Berkenblit. She is PanCAN's Chief Scientific and Medical Officer. And Dr. Allyson is a leading oncologist at Weill Cornell. She is beloved by her patients, as I can tell you from personal experience. She's also the co-founder and chair of the Let's Win Scientific Advisory Board. Welcome to both of you.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, Dr. Berkenblit, let me start with you. You are the PanCAN's Chief Scientific and Medical Officer. So tell us just a little bit about your background.
Sure. So by training, I'm a medical oncologist, and I stayed on staff at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston, taking care of patients with cancer, running the phase 1 program, so early clinical trials of novel compounds about a little over 20 years ago. And I did that for several years. And then I moved into industry. I decided that I wanted to be one of the folks who develops new cancer drugs. And so for about 20 years, I worked in large pharma and biotech, developing drugs for diseases like breast cancer, renal cell cancer, and most recently, ovarian cancer. And after that, I joined PanCAN a little over a year ago, and it was really a way for me to come full circle. So now I'm not just helping one patient at a time, one drug at a time, or one company at a time, but my mission really is to help all pancreatic cancer patients throughout every step of their journey and to support research and advocate for funding, really do what I can to accelerate progress for patients. And so it's a joy to be at PanCAN, an amazing organization, and to work with such esteemed physicians like Dr. Ocean.
Well, that is such valuable work you're doing. I'm so glad that you're bringing it to light with us. So how do you describe where we are today with pancreatic cancer research?
So, Allyson, I wish we were further along. Over the last 20 years, there have been amazing advances in multiple solid tumors, breast cancer, colon cancer, renal cell cancer. They're all being treated very differently than they were 20 years ago. We can't quite say that yet about pancreatic cancer. So these novel therapies like checkpoint inhibitors that are part of immunotherapy, CAR T therapies, these really have not moved the needle for pancreatic cancer yet. We're still using variations on the theme of similar chemotherapies that I used back in the day, 25 years ago, treating patients. And the targeted therapies that have helped many, many patients with other tumor types, they can help some patients with pancreatic cancer. But the majority of the ones that are approved and available now only help a few pancreatic cancer patients. That said, I think we're on the tipping point. We're at an exciting point for pancreatic cancer. And that's why I'm so excited to spend some time with you today to talk about the advances of where I think we're headed.
So, Dr. Ocean, as someone who treats pancreatic cancer patients every day, what do you think the biggest challenges are to, as we were discussing, improving outcomes?
I feel that we, like Dr. Berkenblit said, we are on the cusp of a major breakthrough in research. It is slow, but the challenges we face when I see patients every day is honestly trying to find the right clinical trial for them and trying to get these patients on clinical trials because the spots are not so available. They come and they go. They open up, trials open and close. And the way that we're going to advance research is if we enroll patients on clinical trials, all types of patients, all backgrounds, all ethnicities, we need to get all of these patients on clinical trials, because that's how we get the science and the validation for all of these new treatments and technologies that are coming out. It is through clinical trials. So day to day, I feel that that's a challenge when I'm taking care of patients. That happens. Every day I'm looking for a trial for a patient. If my institution doesn't have it open, I call some of the ones nearby and try to get see if there's spots available for a patient to go on a trial. Sometimes we even have to call centers out of state if people are willing to travel. So right now, that for me is probably the biggest challenge.
Well, Dr. Ocean, I appreciate you saying all that, and I appreciate all that you do for your patients. I should let everybody know that you treated my husband. You were just you basically were one of our instrumental guides, I guess. Even more than treating him, we checked in with you all the time because he was able to get on a couple of clinical trials, not with your hospital and organization, but we always checked in with you to just make sure that we were on the right path. And I can tell you that is the change maker. I mean, the clinical trials that he was on were so much better than just the standard of care chemotherapy. But why aren't patients able to get on more clinical trials? Since doctors need patients and patients need the clinical trials, Alisyn, Ocean, why is that so complicated to match patients with clinical trials?
There's many factors that make it complicated. It can be that the doctor who's taking care of the patient is not well versed in what's out there in the treatment of pancreatic cancer. Maybe they're not a specialist in it, so that they don't really know the landscape very well. It takes a lot of time, and we're not given a lot of time to see patients. We have to search. We have to reach out and call the doctors that are leading the trials to ask them if there's spots on the trials so that we can refer a patient to them. Those are the challenges, and you really need someone to advocate for the patient to really get them lined up for a clinical trial. That's been my experience, that you really have to have someone. If it's not a family member doing it, it's a physician has to do it, or a nurse practitioner, or a clinical trials research nurse, or someone like that. Someone has to be the information finder for that. And that's one of the reasons why Let's Win helped create this clinical trials finder that I'm sure we're going to talk about. But it's really helpful because patients now can go online on our site and search for trials, and geographically and based on what stage of the disease they're in, and figure out if it's a match for them. And it's readily available, so anybody really can do it.
In addition to online resources that are available, PanCAN has a patient services program where patients, caregivers, family members can call in and speak with a person, a highly trained case manager who can really hold their hand every step of the way. It's overwhelming to be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Some people don't even know what the pancreas is, and we have to start at the very beginning, right? And so to be able to talk to a highly trained case manager and hear from them, how they should navigate their cancer journey is really, really helpful. So patients may get a list of, 10 trials, either off the internet or even from our case managers, but to have someone walk them through the trials, understand which ones are actually relevant for the patient based on who they are, the type of cancer they have, if it's spread or not. Our case managers can even advocate, as Dr. Ocean was saying, for patients, calling sites to see, hey, do you have a slot for this patient, or are you still enrolling? And so that kind of advocacy is really important to help patients really know what their options are and make the best decisions for themselves.
Yes, because as Dr. Ocean points out, it's so time consuming. It's time consuming for the caregiver, and it's time consuming for any doctor like Dr. Ocean who is willing to do it, but it's asking a lot. to be able to try to ask your doctor to find you a clinical trial somewhere else, maybe even in another state. And Dr. Berkenblit, beyond the clinical trial challenges, describe the current research climate. What are the challenges there?
Yeah, the research climate has changed fundamentally over the last 5 months. Over 80% of dollars that are devoted to pancreatic cancer research come historically from the federal government. And PanCAN has played a leading role in the last 25 years advocating for more federal funding. Science follows the money. And so now in the current environment with the current administration, there has been a pullback of federal funding for biomedical research, both at the individual grant level as well as funding of the basic infrastructure needed for academic centers to perform clinical trials and basic science research. So it's really impacting all of the research activities throughout the country at every center where basic science research is being done and where clinical trials are being run. I think in the short term, with drugs that are already in the clinic being tested, I think in the next few years we'll be okay in the sense that things that are quite promising will get over the finish line. But in terms of new innovations, things that take really decades to develop, I'm very worried that we're going to lose the momentum that we've had, and we're going to lose the innovation, and we're also going to lose the academic intellectual powerhouse that the U.S. is, with the brain drain that's already happening. Scientists are leaving the U.S. to go to other countries where the funding environment is more favorable for them to do their research.
Dr. Ocean, do you see that in your practice on the ground?
Yes, not so much to that extent in terms of the day-to-day is still happening, as was mentioned, but we do feel it slightly in starting new trials, where there's basically a halt on starting anything new. So we're allowed to continue what has already started, but new research is being impacted greatly.
Dr. Ocean, that must be so heartbreaking for patients.
It is, and that's why we have to leverage what we already know and leverage the science that we already know and think outside the box and try to make therapies applicable to certain patients based on the biology of their tumor without necessarily needing a clinical trial, but trying to create a treatment regimen that matches for that patient based on the biology of their cancer, and doing this outside of the structure of a clinical trial. We have to be a little bit more creative now. And I found myself doing that, like trying to figure out a way that we can incorporate a drug that we know is pending FDA approval, but is commercially available for another indication. Maybe we apply to that patient's insurance company to try to get the drug to incorporate with the chemotherapy. And if it gets denied, then we bring in articles and research and data to make a point for why we are crafting this regimen for the patient. And a little bit is because of the constraints that we're dealing with now, but some of it isn't. Some of it is, I think it's the right thing to do for the patient based on the science, and we try to make a case for that and try to get the drug for the patient.
Dr. Ocean, you are the master at that. I just want you to know from the patient perspective, not every doctor has the wherewithal, the time, the resources to do that. That is, to me, kind of your secret sauce. See the playing field in that way. I remember when my husband was diagnosed, one of our friends who knew you said, "Oh, you need to go see Dr. Ocean. She can see around corners. She is a savant." And that's It's so, I mean, truly, it's so lucky because you do go that extra length. But Dr. Berkenblit, I mean, that's a lot to ask.
Yeah.
And what Dr. Ocean is describing.
Yeah, it is. But that's what you need to do if you're taking care of patients, right? And so there are so many different ways to take care of patients, and Dr. Ocean does an amazing job doing that.
Thank
One
you.
of PanCAN's roles is to try to raise the level of excellence throughout the country and get more doctors educated about pancreatic cancer so they can provide the level of care that Dr. Ocean does to her patients. And we try to do that in part by, again, having our patient services program so that we can give patients the information they need to ask the right questions to get to the right institutions and the right physicians. You know, it's so important for patients to get to centers that have high volume surgeons if they have cancer that is surgically resectable. And then after that, to be in institutions where they do have access to clinical trials. And what's really interesting is that, you know, about 80% of pancreatic cancer patients are actually treated in the community setting, not in a setting, in an academic setting like where Dr. Ocean practices. And so we're working hard to try to figure out, again, how to make sure that patients get the same level of care no matter where they are. It's a challenge.
Yeah. So let's move to something to give people as much hope as possible, even though, as you say, this is such an intractable disease and there hasn't been as much progress with it as other solid tumor cancers and other cancers. Dr. Ocean, is there anything that you have found that's really promising, that's you're either using right now or that you see on the horizon? What's exciting to you for treatment?
Absolutely. What's exciting to me right now is the whole space of the KRAS inhibitors. So the KRAS inhibitors are drugs that target the most common gene that exists in pancreatic cancer, and that's called the KRAS gene, KRAS. And this gene is a growth gene. It's telling the cancer cells to grow. And it's been unable to target this gene up until now. Researchers have not been able to find drugs that can turn this gene off so it doesn't cause the cancer cells to grow. However, many companies now have developed the KRAS inhibitors, and what they do is they actually turn the gene off from signaling so that the cells don't continue to grow. And there are different types of KRAS inhibitors. Some are intravenous, some are oral. The ones that are furthest along in study are the oral inhibitors. They're in a form of targeted therapies. We have them on clinical trials, as well as most of the major academic medical centers do have KRAS inhibitor trials. And that's why the spots are really hard to come by, because it's exciting. And we're seeing early activity and responses with these drugs, both by themselves and in combination with chemotherapy. To be able to see something work with your own eyes is really amazing and inspiring, and it makes us want to, find this for everybody kind of emotion. And we're not there yet, but we're trying really hard to have patients be able to get access to these clinical trials testing these KRAS inhibitors. And that's probably the most exciting area of research right now. Another exciting area are vaccines. Actually, after someone has surgery for their cancer, remove the pancreatic cancer, they make a vaccine using the proteins that comprise the cancer, and then they give that vaccine back to the patient when there's no evidence of disease, so that that vaccine can train someone's immune system to recognize any microscopic floating cancer cells in their body and go after them. And so that is also a really, really promising field a study in pancreatic cancer that I think will definitely pan out. It just will take time. And I'm curious to see what Dr. Berkenblit thinks about the research space and what you find exciting also.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Dr. Ocean. I'm so excited about RAS inhibitors, right? The formerly undruggable protein is now druggable, and over 90% of pancreatic cancer patients have a KRAS mutation. There's already KRAS inhibitors approved for lung cancer, for colorectal cancer, and pancreatic cancer, I think, will be next with the first randomized phase 3 trial of a KRAS inhibitor enrolling as we speak. Daraxonrasib, formerly RMC 6236, is enrolling now, and I'm just hopeful that it will get over the finish line and be the first drug approved, the first KRAS inhibitor approved for pancreatic cancer. But that's not enough, because we know that that drug by itself, it's good. You get tumor shrinkage. I hope patients live longer, but resistance develops. Cancer is really smart. And so combination therapy is going to be needed. And as Dr. Ocean said, there are combination trials enrolling now. And luckily, a lot of the basic science, thanks to the investment of the NIH and the NCI over the last 20 years, has allowed us to understand at a basic level which combinations make the most sense so that we can get them into the clinic very quickly. And the other area that I'm super excited about, just like you, Dr. Ocean, is vaccine therapy. Vaccines, they are working in pancreatic cancer, but they're really appropriate after someone has had surgery. And unfortunately, most people who present with pancreatic cancer present when it's already spread and they're not eligible for surgery. And so we really need to move the needle on getting patients diagnosed earlier and ultimately coming up with a screening strategy. Pancreatic cancer is the third leading cause of cancer deaths right now. And it's poised in 2030, in a few years, to become the second leading cause of cancer death. And the primary reason for that is that there are no good screening strategies for pancreatic cancer. So we really have to work on that. And hopefully we'll get to that part of the conversation as well. But I couldn't help myself, because vaccines are what get us there, right? Then you could maybe even prevent pancreatic cancer in people who are at high risk for developing pancreatic cancer. That would be just phenomenal. I have to dream.
Well, you've led us to the perfect question, and I do want to get both of your takes. I mean, on PancChat, we do like to talk about research and advocacy and how those two can intersect to move the ball forward for patients. So, Dr. Berkenblit, since you wanted to talk about that, and if you have any thoughts on how advocacy can help right now.
PanCAN has a long legacy over the last 25 years of advocating for research dollars in pancreatic cancer. And so, one of the things that PanCAN was instrumental in was for advocating for federal funding for research through the DoD, the Department of Defense, and specifically around $15 million a year just dedicated to pancreatic cancer. And under in the recent months, we've slid backwards there. And so money that previously had been really focused on pancreatic cancer, it's no longer there. There may be opportunities for research for pancreatic cancer funding, but at this point, it is less than it was just 6 months ago. And even the grants that are getting through the system, they're not going through the system as quickly as they used to. And there are more barriers being imposed on accessing that funding, which is not exactly a model of efficiency. And so PanCAN is really devoted to helping members of the community advocate for research funding, for federal funding, calling your senators, emailing your senators. These are the kinds of things that we really need to do to get our voices heard, to make sure that we don't slide back even more than we already have.
Dr. Ocean, what are your thoughts on advocacy and research?
Well, I think that those who are already in the space are already doing what needs to be done, as described by getting more research dollars. But we also, as physicians and as advocates, need to also leverage the knowledge that we have already about what are the risk factors of this disease. So we know that one of the risk factors is late onset or like new onset diabetes. So someone who is diagnosed with diabetes later in life, that is a risk factor for pancreatic cancer. So to me, the doctors that are seeing these patients that are diagnosed with diabetes are the internal medicine physicians, the primary care physicians. They should be the ones where it's on their radar. They see someone diagnosed with new onset diabetes. Hey, I need to ask this. Does this person have other risk factors for pancreatic cancer? Could this be a case of pancreatic cancer? Do I need to take it one step further than just giving them medicine to regulate their sugar? So I think that that's one major area where physicians can be advocates for patients to try to detect pancreatic cancer at its earliest stage. Another area where we can be advocates is people who are at risk because of hereditary factors. They've inherited a known gene. There's a lot of talk about the BRCA gene, the breast cancer gene, but a lot of people don't know that that is also tied into pancreatic cancer as well as prostate cancer. So anyone who has risk factors for inheriting the BRCA gene needs to be screened and genetically tested, but also not just for breast cancer, but for pancreatic as well. And I've seen a lot of patients that were diagnosed with breast cancer years back and then come to me with pancreatic cancer, and they had no idea that they were even at risk for it, and they should have been screened for it all along. And there are screening programs that exist. So if we test the patients and we discover that they have an inherited predisposition, such as inheriting this gene, then we can enroll them in screening programs where they get MRIs and endoscopic ultrasounds at certain intervals so that we can pick up cancers long before they have spread or causing problems. And really that's the future. Early detection is where it's at, where we're going to really make an impact, because if we catch this disease early enough, we can cure more people.
Such a good point. Yes, that is really instrumental to know even before something is actually full-blown diabetes. Just even sugar spiking would be good for doctors to flag. But you're so right. So ladies, what have I missed? I mean, those are all my questions. Is there anything else either of you would like to say, Dr.
I would love to build on what Dr. Ocean said, because new onset diabetes is one of the most common risk factors for pancreatic cancer that people are generally not aware of, and particularly in older people and those with weight loss. And so PanCAN has invested in what we call our early detection initiative study. We just completed enrolling nearly 9,000 people who are who may be at risk for developing pancreatic cancer, to see if we can indeed identify a population of people who are at high enough risk based on new onset diabetes, age, and weight loss that would warrant a more aggressive surveillance strategy or screening strategy. So that's really important. And PanCAN recommends that all patients, all people who've been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, they all get their tumor molecularly tested for those KRAS and other mutations, as we talked about, and everybody gets genetic testing, as Dr. Ocean mentioned, because that impacts potentially that patient's treatment as well as their family members' medical future, if you will, because then their family members can be tested, and if they have an inherited mutation, then they need to get into a surveillance program, screening program for all the cancers that Dr. Ocean mentioned: pancreatic, prostate, breast, ovarian cancer. So this has a big ripple effect. And so PanCAN is really trying to get the word out there, because we know that these surveillance programs, that's how we're going to detect more people at an earlier stage where it's surgically resectable and where outcomes are the best.
Yeah. Anything else, Dr. Ocean?
I just want to thank you, Allyson, for helping get the word out about how important awareness is, education is about this disease, how you're turning your pain into purpose, and that you're helping so many people by helping get the word out about the importance of the risk factors and advances in research and everything that you're doing. We really appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I feel equipped, it's not an expertise that I ever asked for, but I do feel like I have a little bit of it now, and I'm happy to try to help awareness. So Dr. Berkenblit and Dr. Ocean, thank you both so much for all of your expertise, for everything you do for patients, and for everything that you've done for our conversation today. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening today. Please remember that you can find more information about all the topics that were discussed today at PanCAN.org and Let'sWinPC.org. Tune in next time for our next important episode on risk factors and screening for pancreatic cancer. Thank you.